Hello, welcome to my channel Croft House, where I show you different upholstery techniques, re-upholstery techniques and soft furnishings. So we have another dining chair. This is the third one that I've shown you how to do on my channel, but this one is a little different. It's a lovely cast iron framed chair, and the seat is a box cushion piped around, and then the sides are just fitted around and tacked underneath. But on this chair we have a padded back and front. So the front is literally just taken over at the sides, at the edges, but the back is interesting because it's just a very fine, it looks like it's a fine piece of card, but actually all it is back-tack strips here. And we have to just fold those over and pull them tight, which you will see as we go along, and then it's just tacked along the bottom. So let's have a quick recap on removal. You'll see this on all my videos, but just in case you haven't seen them, I'll give you a quick demo now. So let's just look at the tools. My favourite tool is my little staple ripping tool. It's got 4 little prongs that you can hook under the staple and get them out really easily. I have some little pliers in case they need a bit more of a helping hand, and a mallet, and those are really all we need just for ripping. So it's easy to do. You just get the staple into between two of the little legs. I've started here, and just give it a bash with your mallet. Quite often you just need to give it 3 dashes and the staple's out. It doesn't really matter about the fabric at this stage, it's not going back, it's just going to be thrown away. But you do need to be careful of the wood underneath. Quite often in modern chairs it's chipboard and it's very brittle and it's very easy to splinter. And these are actually coming off quite well. Keep the fire retardancy labels. This is from the manufacturer. It's a stick-on label, but I'm going to keep it and get it back to the customer somehow, because just in case there was ever a fire, this covers the inside, unless you're stripping the whole lot down and taking the foam out. But if you're keeping the foams inside, you really need to be able to refer back to this. So we just go all the way around till we're finished, and then you can just rip the staples out as you go. Some people just rip the whole lot off. I'm not as strong as some people. Just pull them out until the whole cover comes off. And then you can use your pliers and take them out, or leave it till the end. I tend to leave it till the end because it saves a bit of time, and then you can run around and pull everything that's left behind on. I just wanted to say the reason I sit down is to protect my back. If you're leaning over all the time, that's going to put some strain on your poor old spine. And that's the first reason. The second reason is you can keep your arm on it and work at your tools this way, and otherwise it's slipping out the way. Oh, sorry, radiator. And then again afterwards you're closer to it, you can just rip them out. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, but they're okay with the glasses. So I've gone all the way around, and I've actually taken all the staples out from 3 sides. And I just want to show you how I do this, because the staples are in quite firmly. It's actually a good bit of wood, a good bit of chipboard. Quite unusual for a modern chair, but actually these chairs are apparently 20 years old. So the staples have come out, and all I've done is just give them a couple of hits to lift them, and then you either use your pliers and whip them out, or you can use the ripping tool and just turn the ripping tool, and usually they'll come out. Occasionally they don't. On this occasion they are all coming out really well. So when you've got all your staples out, it's a good idea to have a really good look and see how this cover is put on, because it makes life a little bit easier when you put yours back. So this one, I can see the corners are just folded over. It's a very fine fabric. This is much finer than the fabric we're going to put back, which has a fire retardant backing on it, which is quite gluey, and it's probably twice as thick as this, so it'll be a little bit more fiddly. But I can look at this and see they're just folded over. Check where the seams are. So on this one I have a piece of edge that goes round 3 sides, and then it's stitched on the corners, so a separate bit on the back. So that's a good guide of how you will put it back. Take it off carefully. Hope the foam is alright, because foam is so expensive these days. We don't want to have to change it unless we have to. Recycling is good. So that's fine, that's good. 20-year-old foam, and that's really good. But there you will find that you have some lumps and bumps where on this one where the piping and the seams of the piping have been, and you'll probably need to cover that. I mean, as I say, the fabric coming on is really thick, but I'm going to put a layer of Dacron polyester wadding just to cover all these lumps and bumps up. And it just gives it a little bit more oomph, if you like, and helps to protect the foam a bit longer. So there you have it. On this one, the piping goes all the way around and just is joined at the back. But you would need another metre of fabric to get cut on the cross your piping to get it that long. So mine won't be doing that. I'm going to have a couple of joins probably at the sides. So you need to measure as well. So you can take your measurements off from here for the top cover, from sort of piping to piping. And I add 2 centimetres all round. You also want to measure your piece of wood all the way round, because this has to cover it, okay? So you've got to get that exactly to fit over that wood, and you probably find it's a bit looser. It's upside down, but it's the top is then a little bit looser, especially if the foam especially if the foam has been used twice. So the next thing to do is strip the top. Now, this is interesting. I had no idea what was in here. Sometimes they glue the back on. If a back has been glued on, it's going to be very, very difficult to get it off, because they use really strong heated glue gun, hot glue. And had that been the case, I was going to make an all-in-one cover similar to this, but it would literally have just pulled on, and then I'd have put a bit of piping around the top, which if you would rather, that is an option that you can do. But with this one, I'm going to have to take the staples out of here, and then we put the little regulator underneath. You can lift it, and inside there is a metal back-tack strip. So I now know that I can take this off and recycle the back-tack strip. Okay, so let's take you a little bit closer to this one. So if to get this edge, just get it between your knees, and again, just to hook those staples out. I've gone all the way along. I'm going to start this end. So this is really useful. You can use a screwdriver, but since I've got this little tool here, I'm just literally lifting that up here off the back-tack strip. It It looked firm, didn't it? It looked like it was on a piece of board. I really had no idea. This is the first one I've seen exactly like this. So you pull it up and then you can lift it a little bit more. It's just metal, you'll see in a minute. Not too strong, but it's strong enough. Okay, and then we can just, maybe, might have to do the other side to get it off, but it's got all these little teeth. Whoops, little teeth. There we go. Okay, so you can just pull that off, and then you can do the other side. It's got caught now. Come on, oh, rip it. Okay, rip it. So here we have it, and then you can recycle if you're careful. You can recycle this. Takes you a little bit of time because you're going to have to pull it out. You can buy this on great long lengths or rolls, but if you're only going to do 4 little chairs and you don't need too much and you can recycle this, then it's much better. And that is what I'm going to do. So we have to take it out. These are just stapled in, so we can just hook the staples out of there. So just the same technique. I'm just going to do a couple just to show you. I might have missed that one. And then just pull those out, and you will see. Whoa, come on. That's it. How easy it is to move that. When we put the cover back on, we need to lift these little prongs, especially with the really thick fabric. And my tools for this is a knife and fork. You can use a screwdriver, but I actually find this quite well because it just get under those teeth and lift them. If there's one that's come in and you can't get it out, the fork's really good to just poke it and then you can lift those up. So here, if we come in it at this ankle, you can see where these little prongs stick out here. And as I say, you just put it back into shape. You do need those. And then now what you need to do is measure and take a note of how far this sits in from the edge. Because that's a good guide for you to know how far your top cover needs to come. And the staples, when we put them back, literally just come through these little, oh, doesn't like that, did it? Comes through these little holes, and actually you can almost staple through the metal. So I'm going to take that one off, and the other side again. Take a look at how this has been put on. Take the measurements, because it's really useful then to be getting back, because you're going to sit this on top of the uprights, and you're going to pull it down. That's going to pull that lovely and tight, but you don't want it too tight or it's just going to pull the other side up. Okay, so I've got both sides off now, and at the top there's a back tack strip. Have a good look when you take these off, how the corners are done. You can see they've just, you see better on this one, it's just literally cut into here and then it's looped around the back, and then the top cover just comes over so you can push it down, and I'll show you that as we do the other one. But it's quite interesting to look at this if it's new, the technique that's gone before, because it does actually save time. There are different ways to do it, but it's obviously worked well on this one. And this is just a piece of it's sort of fibre. It looks like cardboard, but I'm going to show you. I've got a piece here that I will put back. Okay, so it's just a piece of fibre board that comes on a long roll, and you can actually bend it up and then straighten it out a bit, and it's just used to hold the fabric, literally hold the fabric in place. Okay, so I'm just going to take this off and then remove the front, and I'm not even going to show you on that one because we've done this so many times before. I just want to show you one more thing now. I've removed some back-tack strip and the back, and just have a look at how the front has been put on. So it's been pulled at the corners. Always check the corners, that's really useful to do. At the top have come across, have come in here from the side, and then folded over on the diagonal. That's so that come over this side. That's so that you can get a nice neat corner across here, and it's hidden underneath with the diagonal. Everything's about sort of hiding everything and keeping it really tidy. So if you need to use the back tack strip again, remove the tacks much more carefully than I have. Hammer out any lumps and bumps. You want to get that as smooth as you can, and then you can just turn it over and use the other edge, the clean edge. And let's just take a look at the foam. The front has yellow foam. This is standard. It's a softer foam. You know, it doesn't get as much leaning on, if you like, as a seat foam will get. So we use a softer one. It's also used for arms on chairs. And the seat is a blue foam, which is a dense seating foam. It doesn't look very blue now. Foams change colour over time, but this would initially, 20 years ago, I think, have been blue. So the blue is the dense firm seat foam, or you might sometimes find white, which is also a seating foam, but it's softer. I always prefer to use the blue because I think it lasts longer, and if it's a chair, especially a dining chair that's going to get a lot of use, we like to think that lasts a little bit longer. Okay. So we're ready now to reupholster the front and the back, but I'm going to start with the front. If you feel your foam is a bit tired or it's a bit marked, you could put a thin layer of polyester wadding, Dacron, over it, but this is fine, and I want to keep these edges quite sharp and neat so it goes back on the chair more or less as it came off. The fabric is a lot thicker than the one I took off. The fabric that we're using for this chair is 100% polyester velvet, and it is so soft, it's beautiful. Always make sure the pie runs down when you put the front or the back on, and then we just get started. So you just cut it. You can take a template from the one you took off. Always make sure, as I always say, there's enough to really hang on to when you put the staple gun in. If you've got just a little bit, you maybe can't pull it quite tight enough across the front. You don't want it over tight, but it needs to be sit fairly firm, because it hopefully will be on the chair quite a long while, and they can, like any fabric, just give a little bit with use. As I've said in other videos, if you're confident, you can just staple it. If you see that it's straight, then just staple away and you can pull over from the top. But another way to do it is to just put in 3 staples at the bottom, and then you can turn it over. Make sure your fabric sits nice and firmly. So you just run your hand over. So you pull it a little bit, but again, not too tight. It wants to sit nice and firmly against that fabric. You can have a good hang on here, and then you can put your staples in, and you do the same on the top. Oh. Staple guns being a bit temperamental. If you're not doing it regularly, you don't want the hassle of a heavy compressor, then you can just use an electric plug-in staple gun or just an ordinary hand staple gun. But the more power behind them, the better they go in. And if they're not in really smoothly, you can always give them a tap with a hammer. So we've done 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and then you continue on the sides, 3 either side. Okay, and then I usually go to within an inch or 2 of the ends, because we've got to build in the corner. So I'm going to continue doing that, and then I'll show you how to do the corners. So everything is tacked on to nearly to the corners. So we start with the corner. We want some nice neat pleats that are, they're not going to be invisible, but we don't want too much bulk to be seen around the edge. So this is the bottom edge, this is the side edge. The first thing I'm going to do is pull up the loose corner so it's sort of at right angles with the edges of the chair, and then I will just put a little staple in here, making sure the bottom comes up first. So we've got a fairly crisp join here that we're not going to see too much. And then on this one, this is the side, which will be seen, that it's as close to that bottom edge, you can see the line on the wood, as possible. And then just pull it over to catch that one, to hide that one. And to eliminate some of the bulk, we need to, as on the other chairs that I've shown you, just cut a little bit off. It wasn't cut off on the original fabric because it was so much thinner. Okay, so you can see here I've just cut out this piece, get rid of some of the bulk, and the other side I've done the same. And then those will just fold over with a lot less bulk here. Okay, and then we pull those in neatly and staple, which I will do now. Right, so I have the first one, I pulled the edge along, stapled it down, made sure it's nice and firm. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will see me use this long flat needle, which we call a regulator. It has a really good point on the end and a flat edge here. So it's really useful for just tucking in corners. I mean, you can use either edge, and as you see, this is very similar to a knife. So you could use a knife or any long needle if you don't have one of these. But this is really handy for just making sure all the corners are nice and firm. So now that I've got this one done, I'm going to pull over the side and make sure that edge is nicely lined up with the bottom of the chair. Be very careful if you've got sharp corners, bits of wood underneath, that you don't pull the fabric too tight, because you don't want it to wear and eventually make a hole in it. With the regulator, you know, you can really get that inside that join, pull everything down nice and firmly. Use the other end, you can smooth that line over, pull it all really nice and tightly against that line. So this will come over firmly this way and keep it pulled firmly that way, and then make sure you've got this on this edge. The back tack strip will sit on here and the fabric will go under, so you won't see it, but this corner will be seen. One thing I nearly forgot to say, and it's really vital, is that you mark as you go along where your screws are going to go back in, especially if you've got a thick fabric like this. So again, this is where this long regulator comes in really handy, because once you've found that hole, you can just poke it right through and you get a really good hole there to get your screw in. On this bit, I've cut the triangle so that it goes around the hole, again to minimize layers of fabric, because obviously the thicker the fabric, the less the screw is going to get down to the wood. I'll give it a couple of staples, and then with the top the same, and as I said before, I want it to run along that edge, so that's coming over there. Check, 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 double check, yeah, it's in the right place. And the corner is up nice and neatly, so we can just continue with those. So working on the top corners is the same principle. Again, be careful of your wood. These are quite sharp, these edges here. So I'm just pulling that over, not too tightly. Give it a little staple. My staple gun's playing up a little bit today. Ooh! Find the hole for the screw. Very important. So again, we want to miss that hole if we can, which I can do when I've cut the fabric out. So the side comes up and over, and again you want some nice neat pleats here, because this is the top corner now and you will see it. You don't want them to come round from the front. Try and pull them as much as you can over to the side. And then this top corner, I've actually had to take a couple of staples out because we need it to sit back behind the back tack strip. So make sure I've got sort of 2 centimetres, 2 and a little bit centimetres to come in here. So I need to make sure that's going to come back on that edge. And once we know where it is, then we can have a good trim up underneath. So take your back cover and make sure it's running the right way, because you're going to back tack it. So we pull it over and make sure it's even. And you put your back tack strip in the middle. Make sure it's evenly from the edges. And then you can feel across this edge here, make sure everything looks level. And then you can tack this on. Now I put the three tacks here. Make absolutely sure that you're going to have enough to come down at this edge and turn under. So we only need a tiny bit along the edge. Place the back tack strip. Push it quite tight up here because it's going to come down really firmly, and then start to staple. And staple close to the top edge, because when it pulls back it'll have a sharper line. Okay. You actually want to get your staples quite close together so that you don't have ridges when you turn it over. Okay. And then I'm just going to put one each end to keep that end nice and sharp. And a couple in across the middle. Okay, and then we turn it down, and you've got a nice firm edge here, nice straight edge. And then the next thing we do is to put on the back tack, the metal back tack strips, and use your ruler here. This is important. You can start to staple in. Okay, and I do that with every single one. Okay, so you can see here how I've set the staples. So there's one leg through a hole and one the other side of it. And I've got those all in place. And the next thing to do is to try to level the back up and make sure these little prongs are up. And I showed you how to do that earlier with the knife and fork, so that it will be my next job. I will then tack on the other side, and then we'll bring the back down, and I'll show you how to do that. Right, so that's all in place. If any of these little bits are sticking up, as I said, just give them a little tap with a hammer. It doesn't matter too much, but it's better to try and keep it as even as you can. Right, when you've got both strips on and you're happy that everything's in place, and you can really feel those teeth, because this fabric is so thick, and with the the fire retardant backing on it, it's almost like sewing through old tires. And I found that the edges were turned in 3 centimeters. So what I'm going to do now is just fold these over 3 centimeters, crease that down, so I've got a good line there to follow, and I'll do that on both sides. So just 3 there, move it right the way down, follow it down, and crease up until you get to the end. So we've got our fold, and the first thing that I do is cut along here so that I get this edge just tucks in to the join. I mean, it can be, this one's a little bit longer, but you need enough to fold over so you've got a tidy edge along here, and then you can just pull the rest behind. Now the fun bit starts. And we need to pull down and hook into these. And this is where, with this really thick fabric, you've got to work each one into the prongs. There's no other way that I've been able to do this. If you've got a finer fabric without this really thick coating on it, it should be a lot easier. You can probably just pull it in under, but this is really hard, and I'm having to go through double layers because it's really got to hook onto those to pull down. So let's have a go. Keep it coming towards you and keep it over. The first one I tend to bend down a little bit and then start to hook. And as you go along, this edge is going to come ideally in sort of where the join of the two are, but you'll see, because once you've hooked a little bit under, you can pull it down, and if it's pulling too much, then you have to just release it and take it up, lift it up a little bit to keep that edge level. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this and then I'll have another play with it. Okay, so it looks as if it's all coming that way, which is going to, but we want a good firm pull on it. So even though if it looks it's pulling that way a little bit, you're going to eventually pull it back that way. So you just got to keep everything tight, but actually when that's finished, that does sit down quite nicely. You can now see that this is sitting down quite nicely. I haven't pushed it right the way down because I want to make sure that I can pull it always and that it sits where I want it. I don't know if you can see there's a little bit of a kind of crease here, but when I pull it down, that disappears. Now I've started the second corner, get it tucked under, have a little look, but it's pulling really well and it's pulling out this little crease on this corner, and as I pull that down you see everything is just becoming smooth. So both sides are pushed down as firmly as I can by hand, and the next thing is to give it a bit of a helping hand. Make sure you cover the edge so you're not hitting directly onto the fabric, and then just and just keep going until you feel everything is down firmly and evenly, and that edge should come up reasonably level. Obviously recycling is never going to be quite as exact perhaps, but yeah, looking good. Now we just have the bottom to finish, and I don't want 4 layers of this bulky fabric here, so I'm just going to snip that out just above the fold. And then cut a little sort of V into it. And then when I fold under, I've just got 2 layers because they're going to have to double back. But that's fine. So just as you always do, just smooth up, pull over. You don't have very much here to hang on to. So do it the best you can and staple it in the middle. And then once you've got one in it, it gets easier, and you just continue along that edge, keeping everything nice and firm. Right to the end, and then just tuck under, and that's it. When you start the seat, you need to measure from piping to piping, but you also need to be able to measure the wood around the bottom, because the side pieces that you cut are going to have to fit around here. Now the foam obviously can be a little bit tighter, however, if you make the top smaller than the bottom, you're going to end up having to gather this into the top fabric. And perhaps they have done it a little bit on this bit, but this is much finer fabric. This is thick, and you will end up with some ugly looking pleats. So what I'm going to do to get around that is to add a layer of Dacron over the foam. But the first thing I'm doing is to make the cover. So I've cut out my base. Make sure again that the fabric or the pile runs towards you when you're sitting. It runs this way. And then I've made some piping to go around. Now the machine, now the factory piping, because they have so much of this fabric, they can make a piece of piping that goes all the way around. Well, you need an extra metre of fabric really to be able to do that. So I've actually, whoops, it's the side, this is the top. So I've actually got 2 joins either side. And that's just the way we do it. And I can take the piping then from the cut out bits at the side that are left over from cutting out the seat and the back and the front. So I'm putting this on, pin it. You need to cut into your corners. So you make one little snip on one either side of the corners to get this piping around here. And I'm making these quite square. Okay. And then we come up and then we have to join it. Now I've made a video that you can now watch to show you how to make the piping, and then I will show you how to join these pieces. we've got our two ends, and you need to snip back to undo some of this. It doesn't matter because you're going to sew it up again. But what you need to do is put your ends together so they cross, so that when you put it all back together, they're going to sit in a row. Okay, so you have the crossover join that you will have on the piping that you just machined in one go. Okay, when you decide where your ends are going to cross, don't put them at the edge like this. You need to, wherever you're going to have your seam allowance, that they cross where the seam allowance is. Okay, so that when you stitch them, they will be stitched right the way across. So both of these are sort of off kilter with each other. And once you've decided on where you think your join is, machine it, try it, machine again. I mean, you'll know if you don't have enough fabric here, they're not going to meet, but hopefully you will have. Now you can see how I've machined it together on both sides. And now we have to join the cord. So open out your seam, make sure you have enough that this is well stretched, and then cross your cords over. I'm actually going to trim that one because it's messy and I've got plenty. It'll be a little bit easier to show you. So we then want these cords to cross, not too much, a couple of centimetres. If you have a bit less, it's not the end of the world. Now, the general rule is we unroll a little bit, and where they cross, we cut off from one side one piece of the 3-cord piping. Okay, so that's going to meet there. The other side, we unravel it again, and we should cut off 2. Oh, yes, 2. So we then have 3 cords that join. Some people will then take a thread and tie them together. I don't do it because it's quicker for me just to do it like this. But I do find sometimes that when you've stripped it down to 3, they can get a little bit squashed, so they lose some of their body. So just see how your piping feels to you. If you, because you don't cut it off yet, just try it, and if that feels a lot thinner or flatter than this, I often just cross 2 and 2, to be honest. So then you cut the other side the same. Okay. Then your 2 ends will meet, well, however many you've cut off, and on both pieces, and you can then roll it in, get that really pushed in firmly. You can use something to help you guide it in. Keep those right inside firmly, and then have a feel. If it feels okay, leave it as it is. If it feels too bulky, you can cut another piece off. It's going to be bulky on the join, especially with a thick fabric like this. Then you can pin it together. I'm not going to bother. Well, let me see. This fabric is so difficult. Oh, that's not too bad to get the pins through. Okay, managed it. And then you just machine it together. To make the piping and to tack the piping onto the top cloth, I've just used ordinary cotton thread. I don't know if you can see the difference with these. But for everything from now on, I'm going to use extra strong thread. So now we're ready for the seat. If you remember in the beginning, I said I'm going to measure 3 sides and make a short bit for the back. So what I've done now is join 2 pieces. Make sure you've got the pile running the right way. And I'm going to sit the first corner where the join is, fix it in place. Sure that's where I want it. Go around to the second corner, pull it a little bit taut, but remember you've got to get it over that wood, so you don't want to over tighten it. Okay, same with the third corner. And then the final corner, I'm going to fold it right on that corner, pin it, and then this one will come up to join it. Make sure they are level, and where those folds meet is where you're going to machine it. Let's take a little look now everything's sewn together. You need to be really careful when you're sewing the band on. It all depends on your fabric. If this fabric, because it's rubbery, really wanted to pull as I was sewing it, the foot on the sewing machine was pushing it, but you've really got to be careful not to let it move. What happens is if you let it push, you can see it, I think a little bit here perhaps, it's a little bit gathery, and you're going to end up with a pleat if you're not careful. I mean this is pretty easy to smooth out this bit, but what happens is you'll come to the end and then you'll have a longer piece than you want, and it's very tempting when you get to the corner and you've let the foot push the fabric so that you've got a longer bit here, just to cut it off. If you do that, you're not going to get it over the wood on your chair, so you have to keep easing it in as you're sewing over it. So all sewn together, just run round, check all your stitching, that everything, your corners are nice and neatly sewn and that you're happy with everything. Where you have a join in the piping, sometimes it can be a bit lumpier, run not quite as evenly. Just check that to make sure that it looks level. Okay, and then it's time to put it on the seat. Well, the next thing we do is put the dacron on the seat. Again, make sure everything feels even. Okay, smooth it over. You don't want it coming down over the wood because we don't want any more bulk on that. So I'm tending just to trim off those sharp corners. I want it to cover the foam, but not the wood. And the next thing is to line up the seat cover that you've made. Now with the seams, I make them go upwards so they run along the top. That helps to pack those corners out a little bit. So if you can get those in the right direction, and then once it's on, you can just get your hand inside and smooth everything up. So once you're happy with that all the way around, now one thing you can do on a re-upholstered chair, because the corners are always the weakest link, whether it's new foam or second hand. So they're always going to be a little bit bulky and baggy there, and so they need a good tight pull over. So once you're happy that everything's lined up and the top and the bottom, everything's looking that it sits where it should sit, you can pull your corners down so they feel nice and tight, and then staple them into place. Oh. And once you've got that, sit down and have a look at it. Once the corners are in, because you want to be able, you want to get a reasonably level line across the top. So once you've got your corners in place, you can then see how far you want to pull that down, and then you start to staple. And I prefer when it's like this, so I can really keep an eye on everything, is do 3, 3, 3, 3. Let's take a look at how I finished it. If we look at the edge, you can see the piping runs evenly, equidistant from the top. I've stapled all the edges, and I finished the corners by making pleats that meet. They're not crossing over. Make sure your pleats come over so they're on the underside of the chair, so that you don't see them when you're looking up at the side of it. If it's bulky, you can do as we did on the top. You can cut out a little triangle on either side, and then you can fold this over and you have a little bit less bulk. Now we're down to the grand finale, which is just to put on the base cover, which literally just tidies everything up. Then all we do is just lay this on evenly, turn it under and staple. Now you couldn't have more simple corners than these. The back corner literally folds under so neatly. Very speedy to get on with that one. I think I said about your holes, I've just missed the holes coming along. And when I staple the corners, I put the last staple, so it's just holding this fold down, gives it a little bit more firmness. And then on the front, again, find your edge, you fold under, and you're going to have a little bit sticking up. Literally, this is really fine fabric, so all I have to do is just fold that under. There's no bulk, extra bulk in there at all, really. So that's the back on, everything in place, and we have a very nice seat to put back onto the chair. I hope you found this video useful. I'll add another video to show how to make piping, as this one's long enough already. If you'd like to see more videos on reupholstery and soft furnishings, please like, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.